Hi, everybody. This is the last of World War II. I think it's episode 26 or 27. FDR dies April 12th, 1945, followed by Il Duce, Mussolini, and then 2 days later by Hitler. Just as the Allied victory appeared assured and fresh off his fourth presidential election and win, FDR died after having led the nation through two of the greatest crises in American history, the Great Depression and World War II. Sadly, VE Day, victory in Europe, is not until May 8th, 7th, or 8th, I think 8th, May 8th, and he doesn't get to see it. He doesn't get to see it. When he dies, Mussolini and Hitler are still alive. That sucks. That sucks. All right, December 1944, Hitler almost succeeded in his last-ditch offensive at the Battle of the Bulge. You don't have to know military history. These are just some of them. It's pretty sad. Battle of the Bulge. And these are the big three: Churchill, FDR, and Stalin. By the way, Stalin and Churchill did not like each other. I don't believe you can find a picture of the big three without FDR in the middle. He looks pretty cool, doesn't he? Like, don't forget, like, they've posed him to sit like that. He's not capable of moving his legs. 1945, the big three met at the Yalta Conference to discuss reorganization of Europe after the war, since victory appeared certain. So the Yalta Conference, famously, the Yalta Conference is about dividing up Germany. So the way that I remember that's what it is that I always say this in my head: Yalta, divide that up. Yalta, divide that up. And we're going to divide it up. The most important part is we're going to divide it up into four parts. One is the Soviet Union, one is Britain, one is France, one is the United States of America. So we're the Allies. However, when the Cold War starts, that's going to actually be divided up between the Soviet Union as one side, East Germany, and the other three, Britain, France, and the United States of America, are going to equal West Germany. And so you have to keep that in mind, because it's kind of like a trick question on a lot of tests. How many parts was Germany divided up into after the war? The Yalta Conference divides it into four. But then after that, the three other allies, Britain, France, and United States, combine to make West Germany. And the Soviet Union side is considered East Germany. So that's decided in the Yalta Conference. Yalta, divide that up. Trying to figure out what they'll do after the war. I just have a hunch that Stalin is not that kind of man. And I think that if I give him everything I possibly can and ask for nothing from him in return, he won't try to annex anything and will work with me for a world of democracy and peace. Unfortunately, FDR dies, and we don't get to see if he can bring Joe Stalin along toward a democracy, as he had hoped. And so as a result, he dies, and Truman takes over. And we don't bring Stalin into a world of democracy. They stay a Soviet country and a communist country. 1945, Americans reached the Rhine River and invaded Germany. 1945, March. The French are ecstatic. Joined by the Soviet forces, the Allies marched toward Berlin. The Allies launched massive aerial strikes on German cities. We talked about this. Firebombing. Come on. Dresden is the most famous. Firebombing of Dresden. I think it's like 50,000 died. Cologne. These are the Allies. These are considered war atrocities committed by the Allied forces because we bomb civilians. We bomb cities. And then Nuremberg, you've heard about it. The Nuremberg is the way they say it in Germany. We all say Nuremberg. And again, remember the Nuremberg rallies. That's Hitler's Third Reich rallies, the huge 500,000 people rallies. The Nuremberg laws, which are anti-Semitic laws against Jews. And then the Nuremberg Trials, which we're going to talk about in class. The Nuremberg Trials is where they have the war crimes, trials by the war crimes, for war crimes. And they're one of the cities that was firebombed by the Allies. And of course, the Holocaust. Upon entering Germany, the Allies saw the atrocities of the Holocaust as concentration camps were liberated. Again, I read it or saw it somewhere, But I heard they made ordinary German citizens come in here and pick up and carry and bury these bodies. I hope that's true. I hope they made them do that. April 12th, 1945, FDR died from massive cerebral hemorrhage. Last thing he said, I have a terrific pain in the back of my head. And of course, one of the biggest state funerals. Huge. Men will thank God on their knees 100 years from now that Franklin D. Roosevelt was in the White House. That's me. That's this side that believes that. The right doesn't believe that. The right doesn't believe that. A lot of people on the right believe that he extended the crisis of the Great Depression. They definitely don't think that the New Deal programs and the Keynesian economics of priming the pump after Keynes, they don't believe that we should have been putting all of that government money into the economy through jobs. So that's only the left that really thinks that. A lot of people think that, but the right doesn't think that. Harry S. Truman. See, look, he was 60 when he took office. I only have 2 more years before I get to be president. He was a haberdasher. Haberdasher makes hats. And he was the only one that didn't go to college. He also used coarse language. He's a very foul-mouthed young man. You watch that, Harry. Oh, Renee. How do I not have this fixed? Oh, I'm so mad at myself. I bought these PowerPoints, but I didn't notice. I should have fixed that. Harry S. Truman is his name. His middle name is S. It's not an abbreviation. Both of his fathers and both of his grandfathers' last names were S, and so, or first name something, and so he's called Harry S. Truman. So there's no period because it doesn't stand for anything. It's just Harry S. Truman. Fun fact. And yet, look at me having a freaking period there. I got to fix that. All right, all the president is a glorified public relations man who spends his time flattering, kissing, and kicking people to get them to do what they're supposed to do anyway. That's how he felt about it. Hitler dead. Well, of course, April 28th, Mussolini's dead and swinging from an Esso gas station, getting punched in the face, in his dead face from an Esso gas station. He was killed. Hitler killed himself, seeing that the end was near. Remember, he was called the Führer, and Mussolini was called Il Duce. And he makes sure that they burn his body so that he is not hanging from an Esso gas station. He's in a bunker. He's in a bunker. Everybody was excited. Very, very happy. VE Day. May 7th, 1945. I thought it was May 7th. 1945, Germany surrenders. It's known as VE Day because it is victory in Europe. Japan dies hard. So they're still going. Remember, that's May 7th, August 6th. So May, June, July. 3 more months we have of fighting in the Pacific before we finally ultimately drop the bombs. Facing a resilient and defiant Japan who are all fighting for their god and king, god and emperor, Hirohito. They consider him a god. They aren't giving up. President Harry Truman authorized the use of atomic bombs. This is the Manhattan Project, as many of you know, rather than risk the casualties of an invasion of the Japanese mainland. So the main reason that we are told that we use the atomic bombs is that if we didn't use the atomic bombs, then our soldiers would have attacked the Japanese mainland, which would have been devastating. And as a result, a lot of our soldiers would have died. And that's MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur famously coming back to the Philippines. He famously says, I will be back. And he comes back. So MacArthur triumphantly returned to the Philippines, 1944. Remember, he was booted off. And then the Bataan Death March. Bataan Death March. Can you see that in the film? The Bataan Death March. You have to know the Bataan Death March. Like 85 miles and 10,000 soldiers, prisoners of war, have to march 85 miles in the Bataan Death March. 9,000 of them are Filipinos and 1,000 of them are Americans. And they barely are given any food or water or anything to sustain them. They have to march 85 miles. And if they stumble or fall or start to fall down, then they just stabbed them with bayonets and killed them. U.S. subs ruined what remained of the Japanese Navy. And March 9th, 1945, U.S. firebombed Tokyo, killing over 83,000 people in one night. These are acts of war, except what's different is in World War II, we were attacking civilian population centers. Tokyo, of course, is the largest and greatest city in Japan. And all night long, we firebombed Tokyo. 83,000 people died. That can be in your essay. As well as Dresden or Cologne or Nuremberg. All of those. And then this is what it was before, and then that's what it looked like after. Just war is hell. It's the famous phrase, war is hell. It's bad. It's bad. Those are bodies. I don't know if you can see. They're all burned, scorched, burned, charred bodies. In March 1945, Iwo Jima was captured after a 25-day assault, killing 4,000 American soldiers. That's the famous poster that I have on my lectern, where they're putting the flag in Iwo Jima. But 4,000 Americans in 25 days. In 25 days. It was a terrible battle. There it is. There was a movie, I just watched it, Flag of Our Fathers, that there was real controversy over who put those flags, the flag. There's real controversy about who the men were. This movie, Flag of Our Fathers, watch it over break, Flag of Our Fathers. It's about this whole controversy. I didn't even know there was a controversy about it, but there was, about who these men really were. From April to June 1945, Okinawa fell with 50,000 U.S. casualties. 400,000 people died in World War II from 1941 to 1945. Remember, December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor was attacked. The next day is when FDR declares war on Japan, and then 2 days later, Germany and Italy declare war on us. And so we're fully in the war by December 8th, 1945, December 10th, 1945. And so we've lost 400,000 people in that amount of time, and just in Okinawa is 50,000. Just in Okinawa. I can't imagine, honestly, I just can't. I can't imagine this. Seeing your friends, seeing your fellow soldiers. And then this is just nuts. American soldiers of the 77th Division on Okinawa front line listen to radio reports of victory in Europe on May 8th, 1945. See, I don't know which day it is, May 7th or May 8th. Can somebody tell me what day it is? They must be so sad. It's VE Day. Everybody's celebrating at home in the USA and in Europe. They're all celebrating. Woo! It's over. We won. These guys are like, it's not over. We're here. We still could die. That'd be terrible. And then Japanese kamikaze pilots sank many Allied ships. This is only in the end of the war. The last few months of the war is when we have kamikaze pilots where they used themselves and their planes as bombs to bomb ships. And it worked. They sank many Allied ships. But, it's suicide. It is suicide. They are out of munitions, they're out of bombs, they're out of everything. So they use the planes and themselves as the bombs. Kamikaze pilots. And then I think this is the French president. And of course, FDR and Stalin. At Potsdam, the Allies issued an ultimatum to Japan: surrender or be destroyed. So the fun story here at Potsdam is that this is when we tell them that it's unconditional surrender, no other choice, unconditional surrender, or we will destroy you. And then Truman hints to Joe Stalin that we have this very incredible, amazing weapon. And he's like, oh, that's nice. Like, okay. All right, good. He acts so casual about it, but it's because he had spies. He already knew about our weapon. Mushroom cloud. So it's called the Manhattan Project. On July 16, 1945, the Manhattan Project tested an atomic bomb near Alamogordo, New Mexico. the very first atomic bomb ever dropped in the world was in July 16th, 1945, and less than a month later we dropped 2 more of them on civilian population centers in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. And that's August 6th and 9th. And then as a result, we actually threatened a 3rd bomb that we do not have, and then they give up on August 15th, 1945's VJ Day, Victory in Japan. J. Robert Oppenheimer is one of the most critical figures in the building of the atomic bomb in the Manhattan Project. Here's New Mexico, Alamogordo, New Mexico. A weapon of an unparalleled power is being created which will completely change all future conditions of warfare. It's true. And then we went to hydrogen bombs, and then went to nuclear bombs, none of which have been deployed at this time. The only thing Einstein does is Einstein writes a letter and tries to convince FDR, this is way back in March of 1945, that we should consider building this weapon. Later, he regrets having done this and helped to be a part of the building of the atomic bomb, because he knows that it's going to be used for bad and not for good forever as a result. Apparently that's how you make it. This is it. This is J. Robert Oppenheimer, and this is a famous quote that he quotes from the Bhagavad Gita of Hindu scripture. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the mighty one. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. That last part is from the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. He also regretted that he helped to build this weapon of mass destruction that was going to be used for ill in the future and kill lots and lots and lots of people, especially civilians. You guys know that that's going to take place in Tennessee, that we helped to build the bomb here in Tennessee. And famously, when you worked in these factories, in these towns, these entire towns, what you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here, like because of spies. Japan refused to surrender, and an attack on Japanese mainland might cost an estimated 1 million American casualties. That's why we dropped the bomb, because we believe if we try to attack mainland Japan and the entire population, not just the soldiers, are trying to fight against us, that we're going to have a lot of people. That's still very controversial about whether we needed to really drop those bombs or not. Dear Mr. President, I think it is very important that I should have a talk with you as soon as possible on a highly secret matter. I mentioned it to you shortly after you took office, but have not urged it since on account of the pressure you've been under. It, however, has such a bearing on our present foreign relations and has such an important effect upon all my thinking in this field that I think you ought to know about it without much further delay. Secretary of War Henry Stimson. And of course, he's talking about the Manhattan Project. Enola Gay is the name of the plane that flew and dropped the bombs. This is the pilot. I don't remember what his name is, but he, till his dying day, never regretted dropping the bomb. He never regretted it. He said he was doing his duty. He was completing his mission. He never regretted dropping it, knowing that he has dropped him on civilian centers. August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb is bopped on Hiroshima. 180,000 were killed. Mushroom cloud. Here they are, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, I suppose is that guy alive or dead? I don't even know. War is brutal. War is brutal. August 8, 1945, the Soviet Union ended their neutrality agreement with Japan and declared war on them. Some people say that Truman dropped the bomb because on August 8th, the Soviet Union decided that they were going to get in the war against Japan, and therefore, if they participated, they would get land in Japan or Manchuria after the war. And so some say Truman dropped the other one the next day to end the war without Soviet Union having participated or helped at all in the Pacific Theater, because they had neutrality agreements where they would not fight with Japan, just like they had done with the Nazis. However, the Nazis violated the neutrality agreement with Soviet Union, the non-aggression pact, and Soviet Union ended it with Japan. And then Nagasaki, 80,000 people, August 9th. Same thing. This famous picture of Nagasaki after dropping the bomb. Macarthur and Hirohito. As you know, Japan is going to be an occupied nation, and they're going to have to get rid of their military. And Macarthur is the one that's going to control the occupied Japan. And Hirohito has to do what he's told. August 10th, Japan surrendered with one condition: Emperor Hirohito would be allowed to remain on the throne. I think it's supposed to be the 15th. Somebody help me check that. The enemy now possesses a new and terrible weapon with the power to destroy many innocent lives and do incalculable damage. Should we continue to fight, not only would it result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. Hirohito. And September 2nd, 1945, Japan formally surrendered aboard the battleship Missouri. We win. It was a great cost, but we won. 60 million people dead, 20 million people injured. Through the efforts of the greatest generation, that's what they're referred to as the greatest generation, the United States triumphed over the Axis powers in what many considered America's last good war. We call it the last good war, not Korea. Vietnam was so conflicted. People didn't want us to be there. So much conflict. We were fighting against the Axis powers, against these horrible powers that believed they were the master race, both the Japanese and the Nazis, who thought they were the master race. Remember, the Third Reich was supposed to be the empire that would last 1,000 years. And this is it. This is kind of cool. This shows you the progress. So blue is the Allies, red are the communists, and black are the Axis powers. So it's 1940, 1941, and now watch. And then December 1941, the United States is part of the war. So again, we have a Europe first strategy. We're going to attack Europe, and the soft underbelly of Europe is attacked first before we have D-Day, which invades in France in 1945. Well, June 6, 1944. May, the end of Europe, VE Day, and then 1945, VJ Day in August. It's kind of cool. This is a German. The U.S. suffered 1 million casualties in World War II, with 418,000 people being killed. So actually a lot of injured people. 418,000. World War I was like 118,000, 120,000, something like that. And always, Soviet Union, World War I and World War II had the most deaths. 58% were Allied civilians. What? Oh no. Yeah, civilians. And the real truth of the matter was, our manufacturing strength and power, industrialization, we're not getting attacked on our homeland. All of that led us to be able to be strong and continue to create military weapons throughout the whole war, because we're never under attack here. So we surprised the Germans because we just kept coming. Just like before, more and more soldiers kept coming and more weapons kept coming. Everybody's happy. The U.S. was spared the destruction of their homeland, unlike other combatants. There was not war on our shores except at Pearl Harbor. Some people say that she didn't want to be kissed. I don't know. Who knows? It wasn't a big deal then. That wasn't a big deal then. The U.S. was the only nation that emerged from World War II more prosperous than we were before the war. Every other nation was absolutely destroyed. London was destroyed in the Blitz. Dresden, Cologne, Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Every other country was absolutely affected by the war. We were only affected when we first got in the war at Pearl Harbor on our shores. There it is. The income tax went up, but so did the national debt, from $49 billion to $259 billion to support this war. Ike. This was considered America's best fought war due to good leadership and clear goals. Eisenhower led the Allied forces in the Western, the European theater, and Macarthur led them in the Pacific theater. Ike is going to be president after Truman. World War II remains one of the most galvanizing and defining events in the history of America. Seemingly overnight, the entire nation unified behind a singular cause. By 1945, the size of the U.S. Armed Forces had grown from 2 to 12 million. Remember, we have a draft. Men and women of every color, religion, and creed. Young people from every walk of life were inducted and volunteered. America had quickly and fiercely established itself as a global superpower, and an entire generation's identity was forged, in part by what many still refer to as the last good war. Dwight David Eisenhower, most people refer to him as Ike. In his presidential election, when he's running for president in his campaign, he refers to himself as Ike. Please watch all of these videos before the test, but if you're hearing me say this, then you did that. So that's weird for me to say it. Thank you for watching. Bye.